glad to welcome you back to our Soulful podcast. We are in our Meet the Masters series, and the masters I'm introducing you to are the people who serve on our Soulful faculty, and they are an amazing group of people. Part of the reason I want to bring them to you is I want you to understand who these people are. There are a lot of celebrity healers, celebrity psychics, celebrity people out there who, are big about being personalities. Our faculty, it's not that any of them couldn't be that celebrity, but what is really true is these are people who are working in the world just like you are, who are doing the good work every day, interacting, helping people out in the trenches, making the world a better and more beautiful place, and dealing with some of the really hard things in life. So I want you to get to know who these masters are, and I want you to know that they're a resource that's available to you, that you can go to soulfulworld.com. You can reach out, you'll find their websites, their email addresses, their Facebook pages, all the things that let you connect with them one-to-one and ask your own questions and find out what they're up to. And even if you're in their area, or a lot of them do online work, even be able to work with them directly. So I want to introduce you today to my dear friend, Asherah Allen, who has a list this long of all the things that she does in the world: acupuncture, ministry, energy work, Reiki, tell me, like massage. Oh my God, this woman is an amazing massage therapist. Let me just tell you. So many things, Asherah, that you do that all fall in the healing realm, right? Yeah. So here's where I'd like to start today, because this is a story I don't know. Where in your life did you start this healing journey, and what inspired you on this path?
Thanks so much. It's such a good question. And I think I would have to say, I'm the child of a parent with mental illness. And without going into much depth around that, out of respect for privacy, I would just say that, many of us who are children with traumatic backgrounds become healers because we're really nurtured in many ways to be empathic, sometimes codependent, and some other traits that maybe don't serve later on in life. But I feel like my childhood, I'm actually super grateful for it, because I feel like it broke my heart open to a place where my view of the world included much more than just my own needs, but really wanting to heal not just my family, but myself and the world. And I think that I actually resonate as a soul who came in with a little bit of a bodhisattvic like vow that I came here to be of service, and I'm mission driven, and it feels like sacred work. And I truly love what I do. I'd be doing this whether I was getting paid or not.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it all started.
And so when I look at this list of all the different skills that you have and all the different areas of study that you have, what did you start with?
Yeah, so I think I started probably with massage therapy. I was an actress, and actors often work on each other before they go on stage. We'll do massages and get each other limbered up. And many of us were also dancers, same thing. We're just helping each other out. And I love doing massage work. I just noticed that I truly enjoyed giving massage. I always enjoyed receiving it, but it just felt like such a sacred thing to me beyond just helping people limber up. So I went into massage school and graduated in 2000. And then I did that for a little over a decade. I'm still doing it, but I got this desire, I think, to want to help people more than I was able to with just massage. And that's when I started my journey with acupuncture and Oriental medicine.
And that fascinates me, the whole idea around the energy of the body and being able to tap into those energy meridians to actually understand that there's flow. So one of the questions that's come up recently as people have watched this series is that we talk a lot about energy and working with energy and moving energy and healing with energy and the kind of energetics of the planet that we live on. You're a bit of an expert in that area. I wonder if the question has been, what the heck are you talking about? Like, can you give me the basics on energy? So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Oh, I'm so happy to. And it is a really great question because we don't have a word in Western languages that really speaks to energy the way that many Eastern modalities of medicine address it. So in Chinese medicine, we say qi. And I think the best way to understand energy or qi or prana or mana or life force is something my dad used to joke about. He would say, he was a big duct tape guy, and he would say that duct tape is light and dark and it holds the world together. And energy is kind of that too. It comprises all things, it makes up all things, it drives all things. And you know, this, I have an eye that waters, sorry, when I look at bright lights. So basically when I was doing cadaver labs, I know that's a little intense for some people, but as a massage therapist, when I was doing cadaver labs, we would see fascia, and it's this thick connective tissue that runs through all things, comprises all things, moves through all things. And fascia is like chi, it just binds everything together. So in acupuncture, we understand that there are 12 main energy meridians throughout the body, and they're named because of the organs that they traverse. And so we have the liver meridian, the heart meridian, the small intestine meridian, the bladder meridian, the kidney meridian, and et cetera. And so acupuncture has 365 points that we can use along those meridians to direct your own natural life force to expedite your own healing process. So the acupuncturist will use points based on the treatment pattern that we diagnose you with having to bring you into the best state of harmony and balance that we can. So in short, qi, you know, some people would describe qi as love, if that helps you understand it. Love, you can't touch it necessarily, you can't see it necessarily, you can feel it, right? So energy is basically that. It's that which we can feel, but not always see, but we know when it's there. So if you get confused about energy, remember love.
Yeah. I love that. I love that description of it. And, you know, kind of quantum science is cutting edge quantum science, you know, the science that goes, hey, we just discovered this cool new thing. Did you know everything is energy? Yeah, for like 5,000 years we've done that. Let's ask some people, you know, who've been working with it for a long time. Did we have scientific measurable evidence? Yes and no. Yes, because we saw the results. Right. No, because it's not recorded in a scientific environment. Right. But this is not something new. As much as we think of quantum science as being kind of the front edge of the scientific world, and the study of consciousness and the study of energy as being those cutting edge sciences, these are tools that indigenous people of the earth have used, healers and intuitives, for thousands and thousands of years.
Right. And how many of us, when your child isn't feeling well, you put your hand on them, right? We want to put our hands on what hurts. Children will do it too, right? They see that mommy bumped herself, and children will run up and put their hands. We'll put our hands on our pets, and we all naturally run energy through our hands. And if people want, I'm actually going to invite you to take a moment, slap your hands together and rub. Okay. And you can either close your eyes or keep them open, but just slowly start to part your hands a little bit. And you'll feel almost like a magnetized energy between your two hands. Now, I mean, you can play with that. You can make it bigger, like how far can you go out and still feel that magnetism between your hands? So just there right now, we all proved like, whoa, wait a minute, I can run energy, right? So you don't have to be attuned to Reiki. You don't have to be a master healer to run life force and to use it for healing. That's just something we all inherently do. You can refine it, but it's something that's available to each and every one of us.
I love also that you talked about how we work with our kids, you know, because there's both sides to this kind of energy. There's the actual energy, and then there's the consciousness that gets switched when mommy kisses it and makes it better.
Yes.
right? Because our kids believe we can. When our body believes that something can happen, the energy of it, the energy body goes, oh, okay, let's do that.
Right. What
So
the mind can conceive, the body believes, right?
right. And makes
Right.
happen.
And makes happen. And I mean, so back to kids, right? I remember watching my daughter, and she was always very sensitive, but when she watched a movie at a young age, even though we limited media, we noticed that it was real for her. She would watch something and have a full-on meltdown, because as far as she was concerned, the thing she was watching was 100% real.
Right.
Which is where we knew, okay, she's not ready, right? Because she's not able to differentiate. But this still happens to us. Maybe you watch a horror flick and you jump, right? You know that you're not in danger, but we all, right? And it's because what we visualize has that much power. And so yes, energy workers will sometimes work with visualization, because again, if the mind can conceive it, the body will believe it. So holy smokes, that's a lot of healing potential right there, strictly in how we visualize. I could say a lot about words programming us in much the same way, right? How we talk to ourselves, how we talk to others, more powerful than we know. But yes, there's that energy of conceptualization that is not to be underestimated.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, like I said, so much science is coming to evidence what we know already. And that's a good thing, because again, the mind buys it. Then the mind goes, oh, even science says
Right.
this is true. And suddenly your mind, which wants evidence, says,
Yes.
oh, okay, well, if science says it's true, it must be true. Now, did the energy healing change? No.
Yeah, sometimes the problem is that we're trying to prove an Eastern modality by Western means. And so it fails, right? But the one thing that Western medicine has been able to prove about acupuncture is that it does release neurotransmitters like serotonin. They have found direct correlations in fascia, where the pins are placed in the fascia and then manipulated, and how fascia has basically its own communication system. And so I think part of the trick and there's now a lot of evidence-based, there's a lot of evidence that's been proven in the Western world to prove how acupuncture works. That's why it's covered by so many insurance companies now, is that we actually finally have been able to prove it by Western means. But I would say when you come for acupuncture, sometimes we do have to enter into that willing disbelief. So when you go to see theater, let's say, you suspend your disbelief for a moment so that you can enter into the story, right? And sometimes when we go to receive something like an energy healing that we don't understand, we can bring that same sort of childlike wonder that we bring to the theater. And while, Eastern modalities are not a performance, that's not the correlation I'm trying to draw, but simply that when we enter into childlike wonder and we're open, then the grace of healing can flow to us more easily, which isn't to say we should leave behind the rational mind or not want to understand evidence-based medicine. We should, that's glorious. And at the same time, healing doesn't often occur through that part of our brain. So we can do the research and the understanding, but when we're receiving healing, it's really actually good to go more into like our intuitive brain, our animal soul, to just receive and experience. And whether you see, feel, imagine, or know something to be true, all of those pathways will get you there. So even if we're all make-believing something, there are a lot of studies that prove, they're called sham acupuncture studies or placebo, right? We all know there's a lot of power in placebo. Now, does that mean acupuncture doesn't work? No. What it does prove is that just the energy between the healer and the patient, that alone can be very, very healing.
Yeah. And we're finding that, the same kind of thing around prayer, right?
Yeah.
That, hospitals will acknowledge now that there is
Yes.
a difference. They see a visible difference between patients who know a community is praying for them and patients who don't have that.
Right. Johns Hopkins has that on their website now, right? That they really encourage people to use. Yeah. They encourage people to use visualizations, prayer. They've found so I guess the thing I want to emphasize to people is just because we can't prove something doesn't mean it's not real. It simply means we haven't proved it yet. And so sometimes we think, well, science hasn't proved it, therefore it's not so, but sometimes it's because science hasn't caught up. And I love science. Okay. I really want to put that out there. Like, love Western medicine, love science. There's a time and a place for everything. Pharmaceuticals save people's lives. And I don't believe that anything is 100% bad or 100% good, right? Like, energy medicine has its place. Acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine has its place. And if you break your leg, if you need emergency med, if you need surgery, yay, Western med. So I think it's, if we could keep an open mind that, you know, these systems of medicine all have their failings and their strengths, and we just want the best of what each has to offer.
And you know, there's a whole field called complementary medicine.
Yes.
That is, you know, really gives us that invitation to understand these I hesitate to use the word esoteric because but the less tangible methods complement some of those very, you know, tangible, I can put my hands on it. They, you know, they put a pin in my ankle kind of processes as well. I was really surprised you mentioned that insurance is covering acupuncture these days.
Very largely. And some people would say complementary medicine is almost like an affront because these are systems of medicine that actually stand on their own. So it's only complementary if we're centering Western medicine. So I would just invite people to even watch that nomenclature, because the fact is they both complement each other, right? And they're all systems of medicine that are integral and just have integrity all on their own. Right. Yeah. So I even have tried to move away from saying complementary medicine and just really holding things in their own integrity, because Chinese medicine doesn't have to prove itself to anybody. It's been around for 5,000 years, right? Western medicine doesn't have to prove itself. Like, we want to keep proving where we can because it's interesting and it gives us more information. But 5,000 years of empirically tested medicine, like, things don't stick around that long if they don't work.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yes, you should look into your definitely your insurance program. A lot of people are surprised to learn that they have 12 visits a year or 20 visits a year. Many of my patients have unlimited visits a year. Some of them no copays. So yeah, it can be really worth looking into.
Yeah, that's really good to know. The first time I heard anything about that was when my dad was going through cancer treatment. And acupuncture is one of the things that his doctor recommended because it strengthens the immune system.
Yes, so, and it helps with like nausea and other side effects of chemo and radiation.
Interesting. Yeah. So tell me, how many years now have you been at this?
Yeah, so graduated massage school in 2000, graduated acupuncture school in 2011. So 22 years roughly.
Yeah. So in this time you've had, because it's you use all of those modalities, the acupuncture, the massage, the visualization, that all of those things are part of your arsenal when you're helping somebody.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the success stories.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about what's worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my favorite things are patients who come to me, for example, with chronic migraines. They've had them since they were a teenager, maybe they're in their 40s, and they've tried everything. And they come to acupuncture, and within 6 to 8 visits, no migraines. And they often say, like, why didn't I start here, right? I wish I had known, right? And so I love those stories, because then they can go out and tell other people, acupuncture works really well at migraines, right? And also I've had patients come to me who had histories of, a ton of miscarriages, 15 or more, and couldn't get pregnant. They come to acupuncture and they get pregnant and they carry to term. And then sometimes they even hire me to be their doula. So it's really an honor. And I love seeing people's dreams come true that way. And even, the cases of chronic pain management, I have to say, even the cases that aren't going to quote unquote resolve, when people have chronic pain, if I can reduce their pain level, if they come in at a 12 out of 10, and I can get them down to a really consistent 2 out of 10, their quality of life goes through the roof. Like, suddenly they actually want to be here. Actually now their quality of life is good and they can re-engage in work and family life and things that they enjoy. So even if I have those long-term managed cases, it's still ridiculously rewarding. So those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. And And in these areas, when you're working with people, is there a particular age group or time of life that acupuncture works better? Or is this like, I'm thinking about, all the connective tissue that you talked about, the fascia, and how one thing connects to the other, and how, over time things twist and turn and move, and, talk about that. Is there
Yeah.
a time best for doing it? Does that kind of twisting and turning get, is it less likely when you're doing acupuncture? I mean, these inquiring minds want to know, Asherah.
I'm so happy to answer that question. So I specialized in pediatrics when I was doing my clinical internship rounds. And one of my favorite things I did was actually we obtained a grant to work on babies, infants who were kicking heroin. So on day 3 of their life, their intestines were cramping up because they had been born addicted. And so we had a touch needle technique. For those of you who are like, oh my God, did she just say they were sticking needles in babies? We were not. We used something called teishin. And it's a Japanese touch needle technique. So when we're infants, our chi is just on the surface of our skin. So we barely need to touch in order to affect the chi mechanism. So we would use certain points that we would touch with the teishin, which is like a blunted needle, okay? So nothing's piercing the skin. And just with our intention and touching it, we can affect the chi of that point. And sure enough, without the use of drugs, these babies would calm down, they'd be able to eat, their intestines would relax. Really beautiful. And then if the mother was in the room, we got to do the NADA protocol, which I love, which is a 5-point needle acupuncture protocol that helps people who are trying to quit anything, cigarettes, heroin, just any sort of addiction. So it gets us from our sympathetic fight or flight into our parasympathetic rest and relax, that NADA protocol, which I got the pleasure of using when I was in Nepal after the earthquakes with Acupuncturists Without Borders. So I want to give a little nod to them. They're raising money right now for Ukraine and for missions that will be in Poland. So Acupuncturists Without Borders, you can donate now, just saying. So when you're elderly, the chi descends, right? It gets deeper inside the body. So I also love working on the elderly. So sometimes they really benefit from a stronger insertion, from a little bit of a deeper insertion. It's not painful for them. It's that the chi has receded. So I also have done a lot of hospice care volunteering and some death doulaing. And that's really a beautiful treatment to offer people when they're transitioning, because obviously there can be anxiety as we're meeting our end. There can be pain. And even if it's well managed with morphine, it doesn't necessarily take care of spiritual pain. And so there are actually acupuncture protocols. This is one of the reasons I adore acupuncture. It's both body, mind, and spirit. There are a lot of spirit points that directly address spiritual needs and illnesses. So as a very spiritual person, I was drawn to this modality largely for that reason. So yes, it's for everybody.
Yeah. It's just so fascinating that we don't hear, in my mind, we don't hear enough about all of this. We don't recognize that these tools are available to us, that we may be able to use insurance to cover them, that they can treat some of the most common ailments that we go to doctors about and, can't find resolution for.
Right. And how beautiful it is to work with doctors. So I have a number of doctors that refer to me and I to them. So again, our blessed nation is quite divided on so many topics, and unfortunately it's evidenced in medicine too. And that's why I just really would ask us all to keep striving to know that we can work in harmony, right? That not all doctors are malaligned towards energetic medicine. And not all energetic practitioners or energy workers are malaligned towards Western medicine, certainly not. And so, yeah, it's really beautiful when we can cross-refer.
Oh, yeah.
And it's wonderful. So the reason it's not as widely known, some people would say, oh, it's a threat to big farm. Well, I don't think big farm is really out there worrying too much about us ending their business, because again, while we can reduce the need for some meds, there are pharmaceuticals do stuff like, look, we don't do in the same way. And they're different strokes for different folks. Like, I don't like to judge, because for some people, the pharmaceutical is going to be just, if it's correctly prescribed and well tolerated, like just the thing. And hallelujah, but if they don't tolerate pharmaceuticals and nothing's working, then awesome. Look, they can go to the world of Chinese herbal medicine and hopefully find relief there.
All of that, all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So you have really given us a lot of information, really helpful information about how to understand energy healing and energy work. And I know, just speaking on that same front, because people don't realize this either, a lot of hospitals have trained nurses in Reiki.
Yes, I've trained a lot of nurses over the years. I love training nurses because many of them get into nursing because they want to do hands-on work and then they wind up behind monitors, right? Or they wind up like just being so time crunched that they don't really get the hands-on time with their patients that they want. So I love training nurses in Reiki because then even if they don't have a lot of time, like I've trained nurses that work in the ER and if they're able to get consent from the patient, can run a little bit of Reiki. There was a program I was a part of where we ran Reiki to patients who were receiving radiation. So we could go in and offer them Reiki and just calm them down while they were receiving their radiation. So yes, exactly. We can work together, folks. And so the clinical internship round, like I mentioned, that was in a major hospital in the Boston area, right? Like they had acupuncturists flying around that place. So we can work together.
That's awesome. So,
yeah.
So you're probably really, really busy. Why are
Yes.
you involved in Soulful? Tell us about what is it that you want to share? We have a lot of different kinds of people who follow this group. We have lots and lots of healers and intuitives and practical mystics and people like that. And then just people who are learning, who are seeking more spiritual connection, bigger understanding of life, all of that. So how can those people plug in and take advantage of what you know?
Well, I do identify largely as a spiritual person. Again, it's really actually central to just about everything that I do in life. And in joining the Soulful faculty, I feel like that really gives me an opportunity to serve from that place. So I'm a certified spiritual counselor, and I work in tandem with a lot of licensed mental health care practitioners, and sometimes even will insist that a patient is in seeing another licensed care practitioner if they're going to work with me, because I do know how to stay in my lane and what my scope of practice is. So that being said, sometimes we just need to be able to address a problem that we're facing from a spiritual lens. And so it's a different type of counseling. It's like you can't walk in with your Western doc and pray with them, right? But you can pray with me. And before we do your healing, I'll set an intention with you, so whether I'm doing spiritual counseling plus acupuncture, just straight on spiritual counseling, I feel like there's a way for me to serve beyond just the one-on-one that I've been doing. And with COVID, right, many of us had to pivot our careers, and I started thinking, wow, at first everything stopped overnight, no work done, and 3 months of nada. And it was really jarring, but I got to think about, well, wait a minute, you can still serve. And there are a lot of different ways you can still offer healing, right? And so in Soulful, I have a chance to teach some of these things that you can do at home. You don't need to just go see somebody one-on-one. And I think it's just a way of also reaching out to a larger audience. I think all of us are being called to step up right now in multitudinous ways. Like, how can we all help each other? And so the other thing that drew me, Ahriana, is that I recently heard something like the new guru is the group mind, is the satsang, which I love, right? We're so used to thinking of the guru or the teacher as a single person, but really, I think the age that we're stepping into is really about collective wisdom. And so Soulful is a faculty, it's a community, right? And we all benefit. This isn't like the top down, like, oh, we have the teachers, even though, yes, we've said the masters here, but yes and no, like we're masters, but we're also just people, like hashing it out through our own life and have our own problems going on. And we're trying to strip that veneer and really come to all of you really raw and really real. And I like that aspect of it too, because that's where we can bridge the gap with healing. Like, it's hard to relate to somebody if we never see their humanity, right?
Absolutely. And that I think you could train people how to speak well about what it is that we're doing in the world today. That's why it was so important to me and to Mark that when we conceptualized Soulful, that we brought together people who have a couple things going on. For me to name someone a master, for me to speak to mastery, is not to say we've achieved the ultimate level. It's to say we are committed to learning. We have learned a great deal. We have done our work. We didn't just go read the book on it. We put our hands on the problem. We've done the work. We have been doing it long enough to really understand the nuances of being engaged as a healer.
Right.
And I remember when I started as a healer, I remember when I started working with people wishing that I could talk to someone who'd been doing this a decade longer than I had, so that I could say, have you ever had this problem? Or how did you do this? Or what do you think about this thing that's up in today's world? How would you address it? And that's another piece of what this faculty offers, is a group of people who have a decade, 2 decades. We talked with Bonnie Willow last week. She's been at this 45 years. You know, people who have been doing this long enough that they have something to offer to people who are newer. And also that kind of collaborative spirit that you talked about, that invites people to have conversation about the challenges that are part of our world, you know, to really interact with other people whose opinions they can see have value, have backing, have substance, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And we all teach each other, right? You know, I think that I sort of had this thing early on in my spiritual journey that any teacher that I was ever meant to work with would say the words to me that were something like this, that you will teach me as much as I teach you. I will learn as much from you as you do from me, right? And that has been a continuous signal for me throughout my life, like, yep, you're my teacher, because those words would leave their mouth. And I just want the Soulful community to know that I'm here learning from you and really appreciate all that you bring to the table and all that you share, that we're all really healing each other in that way, in the vulnerability of our shares.
Right. I love that. And so this is the other piece that for those of you that might be new to Soulful and haven't had a chance really to get a feel for what this community is, this is a community of people from all across the planet. At last count, we had more than 50 countries represented. This is a community of people engaged in their spiritual work, in their healing work, in their intuitive work, who are developing and connecting, right? Developing themselves and connecting with each other, sharing what we learn, and where we feel really committed to the power of real community. So much like you, going into this kind of COVID shutdown time, suddenly we could no longer put hands on each other. We couldn't hug each other. We had to do this. And this at first was a very foreign kind of forum to be working in, until you stop and consider everything that you've said, Asherah, about energy. Energy exists beyond the matter of life, beyond the physicality of life. And we all know it's energy that moves these signals from one place to another. So we are able to really connect with one another through this forum, even though we're not in the same room. It's just energy moving. And in the same way, we are moving energy in our conversation between each other with the people who will watch this later on. This is energy moving between us. That's all it is. And it's about changing our story, right?
Yeah.
We have to change the mental story that goes, I can't do this work if I'm not in the same room. There are a lot of people that do amazing long distance healing work.
Absolutely.
Because energy moves between people, especially when they're focused on each other.
Yes.
And if you don't believe that, fall in love with somebody who's 1,000 miles away. Mark and I fell in love with 1,000 miles between us. And, we would get on the phone to talk, and it was like, stunning, the electricity that would fly between us. You do not have to be in the same space, because energy doesn't have the same limitations as the physical form.
That's absolutely right. And that's the beauty of energy work, right? Is that it doesn't know boundaries. And I think in the world today, we can all see the role that a lot of boundaries play, that more borders, right? Boundaries are healthy to have, but borders, right? The walls that separate us, energy just dissolves those.
Yeah.
And so it's a common ground for us all to meet on because it belongs to each of us.
Well, and because you said borders again, I want to come back to something that you mentioned earlier, which is acupuncturists without borders.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I want to mention it is we had a big fire here in Colorado a dozen or so years ago. And at the time, I was running a spiritual center, and Acupuncturists Without Borders came in, and we invited them to come, and they set up and did services, provided services for the first responders to the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And community leaders as well, but specifically they were oriented towards first responders because those first responders were camping down the street from us. So they were able to come down, and I was amazed at the work that they did. And we think about without borders, meaning they're in Ukraine or they're in Africa or they're wherever we have these big problems. But if you have a crisis in your community, you can reach out to this organization, and they are just as effective and tangible and available when you have crisis in your home area, as they are in other countries.
Yes, they're definitely, domestic and international missions, if you will. So yes, they're incredible. I love that you had direct contact with them.
Yeah, powerful group. Really powerful group, and they just did amazing work. So I'm so excited we got to spend some time together. I have known you for years, and I know you in a lot of different environments. And I mean, we've written together, we've been in ceremony together, we've done this together. This is not our first foray into podcasting and communication. And of course, as you get to know someone over the years, you become so familiar with them that you no longer are asking the questions about how you got to be somewhere or what makes you do this or all of that. You just say, oh, it's so good to see you again. So I love that we got to have this conversation. I learned some good things about you, and I am thrilled to have you on our faculty, Asherah. It's such a gift to work with you and with the others that are on our team, and to be able to collaborate and to be reminded how much really amazing good work is being done in today's world. And I would say that about people in our Soulful community as well, that this is a community of people doing amazing, powerful, transformative work on the planet. And we are, all of us who are part of Soulful, are so honored to be in service to this group, to provide a constant stream of upliftment and encouragement and community, that you are not alone in the good work you're doing, and that we are every single day focused on connecting with you, supporting you, and doing this work together. So thank you so much for being here, Asherah. Thank you so very much for your great gifts, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon. And folks, we'll be back again with more Meeting the Masters. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ahriana.